Hello there, friends! More than a week ago, we witnessed a memorable event. Heroic, together with their captain Casper Cadian Møller, won Blast Premier Fall Finals 2022. Cadian has finally won a major LAN tournament for the first time in 11 years of his career. Just think about it for a second. It's the first time in 11 years. It sounds crazy enough, especially keeping in mind, for example, Bit, who, during his first year on the Tier 1 scene, managed to win almost every tournament, including the major. But let's be real, it's not a typical type of story here. The legend of Cadian consists of a long way to success and a strong-willed wish to achieve the goal. This guy has faced crazy amount of failures and hate on the way, which no pro player has ever experienced, simply because they broke down and gave up, unable to withstand even a little part of what Casper had to overcome. Damn, he could even write a book about what he had been through. I will try to immerse you in this story, at least for a moment. This one is about a real captain who went all the way down from a promising player to an observer and then managed to get back to the top of CSGO. It was an entertaining journey full of victories and disappointments, and there were more disappointments, to be honest. This is Cadian's story, the champion who had the chance to burn all the bridges and leave CSGO for good. Let's get straight to it. Starting his path in esports. Usually such stories begin with players' childhood, but I will not dwell on this in detail. There's not a lot of info about Casper the Kid on the internet, and there will be nothing new for you to learn if I use it in here. Basically, it's a typical story of a schoolboy who became addicted to computer games very early on, which is why he had problems with his parents. You know, because instead of preparing school assignments, little Cadian preferred playing CS. I think you're familiar with this scenario. The most important thing in this story is that he has been playing in different mixes on the Danish local scene since the age of 14, but not very successfully. And at some point, a still young 18 years old Cadian with some type of experience gained, together with one of his mixes called OX Zone, gets into ESWC 2013 Denmark. That is a qualifiers for ESWC, quite a prestigious tournament of that time. And here's a little trivia for you. This tournament was something like a current major until 2011, but what's even more funny is that he had Glaive as his teammate. At that time, these young Danes couldn't even imagine that in the future they would become irreconcilable enemies, and their teams will fight for the title of the best team in Denmark. Well, and they certainly couldn't think about the possibility of them having a real fight behind the scenes of the ESL Pro League. But wait, that's ahead, and we'll get back to it later. It's 2013. At this tournament, OX Zone performed quite well. They were able to beat a couple of teams, including MSL's team, and reach the finals. But there, they expectedly lost to the giants of the Danish scene of that time, Copenhagen Wolves, that had future star players, Zepnix and Dupree. Despite the good result, as it usually happens to all sorts of mixes, after the defeat in the final, the guys split up, and Cadian finds himself to be the captain of the Agent stack. A couple of days later, the 5 of them were signed by Zapso, and this is how Casper gets into his first professional team. They immediately get the chance to participate in the first major in history, by beating then the German Mouse sports team at the last qualifiers, but as a result, they fail at the tournament itself, taking the last place. By the way, Navi also took the last place at that major, so that means the guys played at the level of Naras Vincere. That sounds much better, doesn't it? And that's basically it. The guys took part in a couple more tournaments, defeated Mouse Sports once again, but in fact they didn't show anything else, and shortly after they just disappeared from the HLTV's radars for 10 months straight. No one knows what Cadian has been doing all this time. There's no information about this, the guys didn't really take part in any famous tournaments, the team just disappeared for almost a year. Probably they were busy training hard and participating in some local tournaments, but I couldn't find any official information on this. That's how Casper's debut year went. In general, that was a good start for a newcomer. He got to his first major through qualifiers, got into the top 16 of the tournament, what for example Astralis and G2 weren't able to achieve at the last major in Brazil. So 2014 starts off with the shocking news about the main leading team of the German CS, Mouse Sports. Despite not the worst results of 2013, they decided to turn the German roster into an international one, and further they announced the signing of Cadian, calling him one of the rising stars of Denmark. He became the captain instead of Gob B. Yes, you heard that right, instead of the legendary Gob B. Apparently, Mouse Sports remembered how Cadian did not let them get into the first major, and then he beat them for the second time. And at first, the young captain fully manages to live up to the expectations caused by such a bold decision. Mouse Sports successfully make their debut at Fnatic Fragout League Season 3 and reach the finals. Judging by the name, it may seem that this is some kind of a small Tier 3 tournament, but it is not. Fnatic, champions of the first major, and Hellraisers with Merkelov, Dosia and Adran played there. Kenny S, Olaf Meister and a bunch of other different stars participated there too. And a fresh lineup of Mouse Sports beat the current major champions. And then Hellraisers and Kenny's lineup on their way. But in the final they lose to LCDC, the future major champions, by the way. In general, it's an excellent result, considering what changes the team went through. Then they were this close to missing the second major in history, which is Katowice, losing to, well, what you know, Kerrigan, but then they miraculously were able to make it through the lower grid. And here's again where Cadian's career had a rough patch. The team fails during the 9th season of Star Series and then takes the last place at the major, sharing it again with Navi. Mouse Sports management weren't satisfied with these results and decided to bring back the former teammate Nuki instead of the star who didn't live to the expectations. The captain was changed after 2 months, way too soon, even for the current G2. People say that Mouse Sports took this step because of Cadian's excessive emotionality, and AZ will tell us about this later. It seemed like Casper and his teammates weren't on the same page, temper-wise. They were able to put up with it only for a couple of months, as it happened in Tricked, when he has been a part of Reason's lineup for the same amount of time. All this was accompanied by the epic words at the start, basically saying that they were full of hopes and ambitions, but after a short time all teams kicked Cadian. By the way, around this time, fans started making fun of Casper, ironically calling him Badian. By September 2014, having changed several lineups in a row, Cadian the Unwanted has been sitting around without a team for the 3rd month straight. At this difficult moment in his career, he decides to try himself as a commentator on Face It League Season 2. And just like that, yesterday he was a hope of the whole Denmark, and today he is already an ordinary caster. However, he got lucky, and while he was casting during the tournament, there were sudden replacements in Copenhagen Wolves. 3 players at once had to leave the team, and Glaive rushes to invite Casper. It was a gift of fate. With Wolves, he managed to qualify for the DreamHack Major 2014, and try to guess what place they took. 1, 2, 3, yes, again Cadian is in the last place at the main tournament of the year. Casper becomes the sole record holder of the number of last places at the major and leaves the team with this achievement. It sounds like a curse. It's hard to imagine how he felt when he was forced to leave the team once again, this time after the 3rd consecutive failed major. He probably thought that he was the problem, because wherever he went, everything fell apart as soon as the main tournament of the year started. Cadian remained without the roster for 3 months. And then the German organization Planet Key finally decides to sign him. And this is incredible. Despite all the difficulties he went through, Casper continues to believe in himself and his strength, and it was this next attempt that ended with the most serious blow. The team failed miserably, and after only 1 month they disbanded. It seemed that this was already the last point in the career of the once promising Danish captain. And Cadian came up with an ingenious scheme helping him not to take the last place at the major. It's rather simple. He just got there as an analyst. There it is, the real rock bottom of any player's career. But wait, we will discover the worst part later. He went to the ESL 1 Katowice in 2015 as an analyst. Then he proceeded to do the same thing during the second major in Cologne in the same year. And people were not particularly happy about it too. The community hated him for not the most eloquent reports. His his opinion was highly criticized, and in general, he got defeated by a girl Giuliano in a 1v1 tournament. He could only win a duel with an AWP. With rifles and pistols, Cadian was smashed to pieces. Back then, people believed that female gaming skills were extremely weak, so it was a huge blow to Casper's reputation. He has become the subject of mean comments and criticism. Under such pressure, Cadian had no choice but to end this part of his life. He decided to never set his foot on this field. He even tried himself as an observer at the Copenhagen Games 2015. Yes, you heard it right. It is a person who sits in front of the monitor and switches between players during the broadcast, so you don't miss any highlights. Yeah, that was tough. He went all the way from a promising captain to an observer. I can't even imagine what was going in his mind at that moment. And moreover, how he didn't finish his career after that. A famous insider, Don Hachi, once remembered that period, just when Cadian was thinking about his future. I look back on how Cadian wanted to fully integrate into the analyst's life, but decided to give himself another chance as a player at some point in 2016. And that's what happened. After working as an analyst in Cologne, Casper was again switching from one Danish team to another, from one mix to another. He even managed to play with the future Astralis backbone. During that time, Cadian played for a bunch of teams: Nostalgia, No Problem, Funny Alva, Preparation, Alpha, SK, but as you probably already guessed, he couldn't stick around anywhere for a long time. It's rather funny that the last Danish team Casper was a part of was undefined. That roster's captain was the well-known Hundan, and he decided to exclude Cadian just after a month playing together. Then he wrote on Twitter that Cadian had a great talent with AWP, but the team couldn't play properly with him. I'm just shocked at the level of eagerness that this person had. Apparently, when he fell to the bottom of his career, he still decided to give himself one last chance. Thank God, he never returned to trying himself as an analyst and an observer, and after all these dozens of unsuccessful attempts in Europe, he goes all in and buys himself a ticket to America to perform CPR on his career for the last time. And once again, the wheel of chance intervenes in the fate of Cadian. The new American roster Rogue signs sniper Wardell, but less than a week passes and this guy gets himself into a fight with the whole team and goes back to Ghost, just a few hours before the start of the first match of the ESL Pro League Season 6. That being said, the guys from Rogue immediately during the tournament urgently started looking for a new sniper, and the choice falls on a free agent Casper. And it was a great decision. As you know, the level of the American scene has always been slightly lower than the European one, so the Danish player significantly strengthened the team. He returns to the role of an ordinary sniper and regains confidence. However, just a couple of months later, their captain leaves the squad, and of course, Cadian was a perfect option here too. Casper takes over the board and quickly takes the roster to a new level. After a short series of failures, Rogue becomes one of the strongest teams in their region. It would seem that this right here is a success, and this was worth going through a real hell and rising from the ashes like a phoenix for Cadian. However, everything is not so simple. Casper himself considers this particular moment of his career to be almost the most challenging. Remember how Simple was able to live on the other side of the world for only 2 months? Cadian lasted a whole year. Over the course of 4 years, he has changed dozens of teams, walked through the very bottom of his professional career, and finally returned to the big scene. Rogue beat Complexity in the top grid, qualifying for the major, and advanced ahead of schedule to the Face It major. After the victory, Casper shared what he went through to get to this point. It was the culmination of sacrificing my normal life. It's a pretty big deal to travel to a different continent to play, especially considering the way I did it. There is no gaming house here, I don't have another Danish player accompanying me. I am alone on the other side of the world, fighting to be the best at what I love. This is a really important achievement, which proved first of all to Cadian himself that all his efforts weren't useless. It was a long and hard way in America, throughout which, as he admitted, he often had to fight against doubts and a desire to give up. Of course, I thought about that, but I believe in continuity above everything else, and you only have that if you stick around and work hard. I've changed teams many times in my career, so it's been good for me to stay put and build something. I know we've had changes too, but we've kept the core and we now have a team that I believe in. So this period was a turning point in his career. Cadian still managed to find a team in which he was able to get comfortable, build something and achieve some good results from scratch. But more importantly, Casper has grown as a person and as a player during this time. According to him, he was finally able to grow up enough, learn to overcome difficulties, began to work on his shortcomings in order to become a better version of himself. HLTV's editors wrote that after talking to Casper, they realized that his maturation as a player especially comes from learning to accept his emotions, learning to let them out, and learning to use them on the server instead of taking them out on teammates or even worse, on himself. Therefore, it seems to me that a new chapter of Cadian's history has started. He had a boost as a leader and as an individual. He curbed his emotions, being able to redirect them in a benefiting way during the game and expressing them fully after the match. For example, after this victory, Casper will begin to show his emotions in public for the first time. After getting into the major, he will first give an interview in which he will suddenly switch to Danish to thank his loved ones, and after that, he will even cry, telling about the incredible support of his mother. She watches every game, goes to HLTV several times a day, and probably knows more about the scene than most of my friends. Rogue performed quite well at the major itself, even though they couldn't get into the Legends stage. Okay, I'm going to let you judge for yourself. They lost to Astralis in their prime form with a score of 16-13 and to North during the third overtime with a score of 23-25. And that was, by the way, number 4 in the world ranking. Summing up, the American team Rogue, being a tier 3-4 composition, went an incredible way to the major, where they showed the closest possible matches with the two best teams in the world at that time. And it all happened thanks to Cadian. He carried not only as a captain but also as a sniper. He finished that year with a 1.16 rating. And yes, this all took place in a weak American region, but still Casper could not even dream of such a result a year ago. And in his homeland in Denmark, they couldn't help but notice the Cadian's radiance and the excellent game of the team under his leadership. Immediately after the major, North decides to remove MSL and sign Casper for the role of a sniper and a captain of the team. On such a positive note, he's happy to return home to try his hand on the Danish scene again. I fought hard for this opportunity. I left my family and friends to continue my career in the USA, and I am very happy to move to Copenhagen and play with this wonderful team. But unfortunately, in North, a failure awaited Cadian again. And not to say that this was Casper's failure as a captain, it's just that in 2018, competition began to actively increase on the Tier 1 CS scene. The dominating Astralis, Na'Vi and Liquid fighting for the second place, the rise of Vitality, FaZe and Ants were trying to catch up, and still strong Mouse Sports, MIBR and NIP. In general, North passed the qualifiers and group stages without any problems, but then they constantly had problems with one of these previously mentioned teams. 4 times they made it to the ECS finals, and the European division of EPL can hardly be called a bad result, keeping in mind the level of competition. But most likely, this did not satisfy the team itself in the first place, since they had high expectations from the beginning. Because of this, the number of conflicts grew. This also affected the results. North managed to lose to Vici with a score of 0-2 2 times in a row. The guys lost to Sharks, the 94th team in the world, and all this happened at the important tournaments such as the ESL Pro League and the qualifiers of the major. The only silver lining in this series of failures was the victory at the tournament from GGBet Ice Challenger. They beat Na'Vi in the finals, and this was the first victory of any kind for Casper. However, this did not affect the decision of North's management in any way. They were already preparing future replacements in full swing. First, they removed the coach, and then they kicked Cadian. As I already mentioned before, it was AZ who revealed the main reason for these reshuffles. He was leading the team with too many emotions. We were in tension all the time. Casper was also unhappy with his former teammates. I think North is one of the worst teams I've ever played for. I didn't feel like it was the right one for me. I just wasn't comfortable. There was no person person who was able to give a little more of himself, to be the first to jump out from around the corner, play a trade kill game, find new tactics, cheer up after a defeat. Cadian's career was once again under threat. It seemed like there was no better option than to become an analyst again. He spent 6 months benched in North, and by the time his contract expelled, all Danish teams weren't looking for anyone. So Casper had no other choice but to play as a stand-in in different rosters. He even participated in some tournaments as a player of some mixes. In general, it looked like he was back to where he started before he left to America. And here, for the god only knows which time again, Cadian gets lucky. Although I'm not that sure that this can be called luck, more like he just earned it. Complexity bought out Blamef from Heroic, which is why the team had to look for a new player. Plus, the guys had to completely rebuild their structure. Snappy becomes the captain and Aztec switches from AVP back to rifle, and the team needs a new sniper. As a result, the choice falls on Cadian, and he joins the team as a stand-in. And Casper grabs this opportunity. Over the next 2 weeks, Heroic did not lose a single map, winning the qualifiers for ECS, Star Series and the European division of the EPL, and Cadian becomes one of the main factors of the team's success, as he not only played well individually, but also helped the team as the second in-game leader. In general, it was not surprising that Heroic decided to sign Casper on a long-term contract. Then he will continue to prove that this decision was right by single-handedly carrying the DreamHack finals in Atlanta in 2019, finishing with a rating of 1.73, a tournament with a $50,000 prize pool, although only teams from the HLTV's top 20 were participating. In general, it's a tier 2 tournament, but still. And just when Casper began to see any type of positive results in Europe, all these achievements were overshadowed by the situation with Fun Plus Phoenix. You probably remember that Chinese organization wanted to enter CSGO by buying out the promising lineup from Heroic for a fabulous $1.8 million. The players were glad to gain this opportunity. You know, they would get a huge support of a large and rich Chinese organization. Moreover, FPX specifically wanted to buy the roster for their slot in the first Flashpoint, with a prize fund of $1 million, just like at the major. In general, after trying himself in the role of an observer, it was some kind of a fairy tale for Cadian. Dreams began to come true from that moment. But then Astralis, that had half of their players going on vacation feeling deeply burnout, announced that they will sign Aztec as their 6th player in 3 months when his contract with Heroic expires. They also mentioned that they have already negotiated with him and had his approval. Because of this, FPX walked away from the deal and withdrew the squad from the tournament right at the moment when the players were already warming up before the first game. They got simply dismissed from the game a few minutes before the start. This was a serious blow for Casper. Feeling deeply hurt, he recorded a video on Twitter so that we all feel this pain. We flew across the globe during the pandemic, risking our health to play a survival game while everyone else is waiting. We left our homes, our comfort zones. I don't mind it. I'm willing to sacrifice everything to do my best to get the best version of myself and my team. Even under such circumstances, we continue to fight to the end. We did everything we could to make it work, but I don't know. To be honest, I just feel devastated. Sacrificing time with family and friends, we tried to become the best in the video game, and then we just weren't allowed to play it. I don't think I've ever been treated this bad. Don't you get this feeling that this guy has had enough? Isn't it heartbreaking to see all these misfortunes? But luckily, it didn't break the team. On the contrary, Heroic take the initiative into their own hands and make fateful roster changes. After Aztec left the squad, the team removes the coach and Snappy, and the vacant places get occupied by Tassus, Nico and Hunden for the role of the coach, while Cadian himself becomes the captain. After such drastic changes, the team was waiting for a stunning success. They win ESL Cologne and the Aeromar DreamHack Open Tournament, twice beating the Prime Vitality stack with Zyvu. And after that, they also win the EPL Season 13, in the final of which Cadian against Gambit will create the best highlight of the year, and definitely one of the best highlights in the history of CSGO.
So he actually shoots the AWP in the back of the head without anyone looking.
Gets the AWP and kills the guy CT.
Yeah. Oh my god, he's knifed him, and he's gotten away with the AWP. I'm starting to get nervous. There's no way. Cadian, you can't win Pro League like this. You can't win Pro League like this. No way. Exile's left, 40 seconds and the bomb's on A. Take your time, son. You're about to make the play of your career. Come on, Cadian. He's thinking about round. Jumps
Saw him.
Exile gets the info. He just has to hit this shot, and he's done it for Heroic. The leader. calling well above his years, clearing corners and no! You're an animal! Heroic have done it and I just can't believe.
At that moment, Heroic even thrones on the first line of the world ranking, and in the long run they consistently stay in the top 5. So now Casper and his team are at the top of CSGO. His dreams have finally come true. Cadian has everything now. Big victories, a team that appreciates and respects him. His emotionality and leadership skills have finally benefited young and inexperienced players. And this video could have ended here if not for one thing. All this happened during the coronavirus era. All these battles were won online, which greatly reduces the value of these victories compared to LAN tournaments. Perhaps they wouldn't have achieved anything if it wasn't for online. Therefore, Casper had yet to prove that his team was capable of winning major LAN tournaments. And it seemed that Heroic had everything for this. Decent young shooters and self-confidence after valuable victories. But then, fate decided to test Cadian once again. This time by jeopardizing not only his career but also the existence of the team in general, and Hunden was to blame for this. He had just returned to the team after the ban he received due to the use of a coaching bug, but he immediately gets into a new scandal. It turns out that Hunden, being the coach of Heroic, had been negotiating for a few months about moving to Astralis. There were even rumors that he leaked some tactics of his own team to them. In response to this, before the start of IEM Cologne 2021, the team made an anonymous decision to perform at the championship without a coach, due to a loss of trust. After that, according to Heroic, Hunden got furious and restricted players' access to the strategy document, and even eventually handed it over to their competitors. A huge scandal broke out. The situation caused a storm of criticism rushing down on the former coach. ESIC announced that there would be an investigation, and Heroic even sued him. And when Hunden realized that he was going down, he decided to take the whole team with him, saying that the players were aware of the coaching bug, and Nico even helped him. All this resulted probably in the messiest scandal in the history of CSGO. Heroic players and the organization itself as a whole have found themselves under unprecedented amount of pressure. At some point, they were abandoned by all sponsors. The careers of all the players could have ended because of this. It was such a difficult moment for them that they couldn't hold back tears when they were telling their version of the story with Hunden. Someone believed them, someone did not, but many analysts are still in doubt. Fortunately, everything turned out to be well, and Heroic went through this scandal losing only the coach and Nico. Cadian proved himself to be a real leader in this situation, primarily worrying not for his career but for the careers of his young teammates. It was very difficult to look at our young players, just knowing that they are innocent and knowing the pressure they have been feeling from the community. I have more experience and I'm kinda used to the pressure, but it was difficult to remain silent knowing the whole situation. I am proud that they coped with all the difficulties and continued to fight. I am proud that we were able to remain a team after all these problems. Still recovering from such a heavy blow, the Danes confidently kept their place in the top 10 teams in the world ranking until the end of 2021 and almost the whole 2022. But no one thought of them as tournament winners. With the exception of 2 victories at small tournaments, the Pinnacle Cup, their best result was 3rd, 4th place at IEM Katowice 2022, and them being able to get into the playoffs at the major in Antwerpen. After the major, the Danes decided to replace Refresh with Yabi, and it turned out to be the right decision. It is worth noting the transfer policy of Heroic in general. Since the signing of Cadian after each replacement, the team has made a qualitative leap forward, and now the updated Heroic successfully passed the qualifiers for the major in Rio, immediately entering the Legends stage. After which they just as confidently as before get into the playoffs with a score of 3-1, having failed only in the match against Cloud9. In the playoffs, Cadian and his team has blown the headlines, destroying Furia in front of their stadium. They defeated not just the team, but the whole Brazilian spirit of Counter-Strike, which no one has managed to do at this tournament, even Navi. FaZe, Na'Vi, Cloud9, Furia, they weren't able to do this. But Heroic, with a captain that nobody even wanted before, who did not really win anything in his life, even on the contrary, managed to lose a duel to a girl and fell down to become an observer. This is already a huge achievement for Casper and his team. It remained to take only one step, from the finalists to the champions. But as you know, the last step is the most difficult one, and the Danes stumbled. In the final, Heroic lose their moment, and therefore lose to outsiders without a single chance. Apparently it wasn't meant to be yet, but knowing the history of Cadian, what he had to go through, how it tempered his character and will to win, it seems to me that a major championship is somewhere around the corner for him. Old pal Carrigan won the major at the age of 32, and Cadian is only 27, so he has 5 years to repeat the success of his Danish counterpart and accomplish his main goal. And he began to do it right after the major. In 2 weeks after coming back home, the Danes win the Blast Premier Fall Finals 2022, beating FaZe in the last match. And not those guys from FaZe that got eliminated with a score of 0-3, but the team that won the major in Antwerpen. Most notably, Casper and his team were able to make it happen at home in front of Danish fans, thereby breaking the curse of Danish teams, which had not allowed any home-grew rosters to win a tournament in Denmark until that moment. Even the prime squad of Astralis couldn't do this, but Cadian did. And after all this history, how could anyone call this guy crazy? I bet no one would dare to call him a crybaby, a weeper or something like that. This guy freaking deserved it. And his tears in front of a huge crowd of spectators only make us respect Casper even more. He's not shy of anyone. Yeah, it may seem like he screams like a madman, he may cry out loud, he may fall to his knees. He's a real human, he really feels that way. This guy has been trying to achieve this for 11 years. You can see for yourself what kind of hell he had gone through to finally lift a really important cup over his head. And the main thing is to do it in front of your audience. A couple of years ago, these Danes didn't even know about Cadian's existence, they only had Astralis, their main heroes. And finally it happened. The guy that just leaves the game, who loves the game, has made the whole pro scene fall in love with him. He made all of us fall in love with him, including me. And I'm sure this is just the beginning of his journey. And yes, he's just 27 years old, but look at these emotions. It's like he's just starting to live. We have reached the stage where CS is turning from just a game into something more. As Cadian reminded us, we are on the brink of a new era when Counter-Strike is not just a game, not just entertainment or business. It's a dream, it's a goal, it's a meaning of life. And I know at least one person who believes in it. And it was his story. The legend of a real captain and a champion who really deserved it all. This was Cadian's story. See you soon.